For meeting with me today.
Hi, Whitney.
I'm looking forward to going over your student work. So what standard were you looking at last week?
So last week I was focusing on operations and algebraic thinking, and I want to look at question number 2, and it's focusing on a second grade standard as well as operations and algebraic thinking in first grade. So the first grade standard was really looking at subtraction with an unknown addend. And for second grade, it's looking at addition and subtraction within 20.
Okay. And what did students need to show in order to show mastery? What was the exemplar?
My exemplar here was they were needing to do a subtraction equation with an unknown number. So for example, on this letter A, they should have had 20 minus 10 is equal to 10. So they were supposed to be able to look at the beads that were given and then the ones that were hidden.
Okay, so they needed to find an unknown. And they knew the total was 20, and that's where it's tied into that addition and subtraction within 20?
Yep.
Okay. What did you notice as you were going through their work?
So as I was looking at the specific question and noticing that a lot of students got 1 or 2 wrong within this question because there was a total of 5,
Okay.
I was really wondering, were they missing the beads that were on the other side? Were they not counting in groups of 5? Or were they off because of their subtraction?
Okay. So let's start looking at your work.
Okay.
Do you have them sorted?
I haven't sorted them
Okay.
yet.
Let's go ahead and do that.
Okay. So how would you like us to sort them?
Well, let's see. So this kiddo missed 1.
Actually, I misscored it, so I put an okay, so
Oh,
we
okay.
got all 5.
Okay, so let's just put him right here.
So this is a -1.
Okay.
As well as this. This is a +5.
Okay.
+5 minus 2.
Okay.
Minus 2. Minus 1. Minus 1. Plus 5. Minus 1. Minus 2. Minus 3. And minus 1.
Okay.
So I have 4 piles.
Okay. So let's start off by looking at this one.
Okay.
Okay. So what do you notice about what this student did?
So
Or what they didn't do?
what I'm thinking here is that she looked at this group of beads really quickly and probably didn't count. She probably counted 5, 10 and assumed that this third set of beads was 5 and not 4 because it's 4.
Okay.
So I think she looked at it really quickly without actually counting it by 5s or even 1s.
Okay. So this for that. So that's for this
Yep.
one. Okay. What about these other ones?
So for this one, she had 6 here, and I'm not quite sure to get to 20 why she thought she would need 9.
Okay.
And then for this one, she had 5, 10, 14, and then she had 1 on this side. So for this one, to me, it looks like that she just didn't look on the other side of the block. So
Okay.
this makes sense to me,
Okay.
as well as this one. But C, for some reason, I'm trying to figure out why she made that mistake.
So let's look at the other ones that missed 2, and let's see if they missed any of the same ones. So this girl missed, or child missed B, C, and D. This one, she missed B and D.
Yep.
Here's B and C,
Yep.
and B and D again. Okay, so all 4 of these kiddos missed B.
Yep.
So why do you think that that is?
I think that they all did something similar. So I think what they did was they counted the 5 on top, the 5 on the bottom, and then really quickly looked at the third group and thought it was a 5, but it was really just 4.
Yeah.
So I don't think they were really looking at it. And to me, they're not really paying attention to their work. So I feel like I would need to go back and work with these kids and say, you really need to count by 5s and 1s and really check your work as you're going through and be a little bit more attentive to your counting
Okay.
than rushing through it.
Okay. Okay. So it sounds like going forward with these kiddos that were in the not meeting, especially on question B, which they all missed, meeting with them and going through like the importance of going back and checking.
Absolutely.
And then I think if they still are not getting it, what would be a next step after that?
Well, I'm thinking maybe tomorrow or in the next day or two that I can work with this group, not independently, but as a small group, and focus on a mini intervention of really attending to your work. And then maybe as they're in my small group, working with them and checking in one-on-one and seeing if they can go back and do it. And then if they can, then that to me is just showing that they're not really being attentive. If they cannot, then I think I need to pull them individually and see what the underlying issue is from there.
Okay, that sounds like a great plan. Let's go ahead and move on to let's see, do we have, these ones would be maybe approaching, like the approaching group, so I'd say this was not meeting.
Yeah.
Perfect, and let's go ahead and look at these kiddos.
So we have B,
Okay.
C, E, B again, and B again.
Okay.
So I would say for this group, I would probably have the same plan
Okay.
as the other one. Maybe meet not together, but in a smaller group, or maybe even have a whole group class discussion on checking work. For these two here, this kiddo, I think, looked at the 5 on the top and then just didn't look at the bottom. And that's why they didn't come up with the right answer here. So I think that would be very similar to this group. And for this one here, 5, 10, I would wonder if they were also not checking on the other side. So maybe really having them look at both sides of the number rack.
I'm wondering, is there some way that you could, like, how, besides telling them to like attend to the precision and to check their work, how could they like develop that strategy? Like, what's a way that you could help them do that on their own? Like, is setting like another step? Because if you look at the knowledge that they need to have, like, do they, they're only missing one, and I think that your like next steps are absolutely correct, and I think that you're right that it does seem like they're just not going through and checking their work. What's a way that they could check their work? Like, is there like a next step to this so that they could check their own mistakes before you just tell them to check them?
Absolutely. I think it could be a good idea if maybe I came up with a checklist for them. And maybe they have either a checklist up on the Promethean board, or they have their own independent checklist on their desk to make sure they're showing their work, they're reading directions, they're looking at both sides of the number rack, or having specific things where they would have to physically check off to make sure they're doing it.
Is there a way for them to like use something else to check their work? Like some way that would be almost like an extension, but a way for them to like visually see if their work would make sense? Thinking that they're going to 20.
So we could have them do an opposite problem.
Okay.
So I could have them, so for this one, for instance, so if they're trying to get to 20 and they had 10 here and 10 here, I could say I want to see an addition equation or a subtraction equation on the side that is proving that you got to 20.
I just think that would be a good way for them to, instead of rushing through it, for them to go through. Okay? So for the approaching group, are you doing anything differently than what you're going to be doing for the not meeting?
I would think for this group, they would be ready to do the equations on the side, whereas I think the not meeting group, I would maybe start with the checklist first
Okay.
and then do the equations to really make sure they're showing their thinking.
Okay. Okay. I think that sounds good.
Okay?
Let's look at your meeting / exceeding group.
Okay. So we had 1, 2, 3, 4 kiddos that got all 5 problems correct.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm looking at this, it's showing me that they are attending to the precision here.
Mhm.
They're really looking and counting. They're probably subitizing. They have that foundation from first grade and they're carrying it into second grade and they're ready to move on without any specific interventions or reteaching.
So for the reasons you just said, these students have demonstrated knowledge of the standard.
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay. So then, how can you extend the task or challenge their learning?
I think I would have this group either work separately and try to give them maybe specific problems that are going beyond 20, or having them also write out the equations like my other group and then checking their work with an opposite equation to make sure that really they're truly having that transfer of knowledge.
And do you see that as the next step in the standard? Like in order to like continue to meet mastery? So is the OA for second grade addition and subtraction within 20?
Yeah, so I would even possibly put it within a word problem.
Okay.
And see if they can maybe put it in the context of other unknown numbers
Okay.
in kind of all places and see if that worked.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe taking away the visual of the number rack and other manipulatives.
Okay. Okay. So, looking into your next week's lesson plans, when can you begin to plan for these reteaches, or what days, or when would it work best based off of what you'll be teaching next week?
Well, this is a post-assessment, so
Okay.
I think with that, I would need to take the 2 groups and do a mini reteach
Okay.
before I jump in to my next unit. And then I think that this group here would either be ready to move on or I would give them extensions before going into unit
Okay.
2.
Okay.
So they stay on the same page.
Do you know, like, is there a day or something that do you think would work best? Are you hoping to do it at the beginning of the week, or?
I feel like with today being Tuesday, that by tomorrow I could probably get a good solid plan in. If not by tomorrow, do that so then I could start my unit on Thursday.
Okay. Great. That sounds awesome. So, just to kind of summarize what we talked about, we really heard your goals, the operations and algebraic thinking, and then finding an unknown addend within 20, and then the support was through the visual of the number rack, right? That was what the Unit 2 assessment was looking at. Subtraction of an equation with an unknown, and then the beads were given.
Mm-hmm.
We discussed the not meeting group, and really talked about how they all missed that B.
Mm-hmm.
And we discussed how it seemed as though they assumed it was 10 without verifying.
Right.
And that your plan for a reteach was to do a small group and then really reinforce that attending to precision. And with that not meeting group, possibly introducing a checklist, just to hold them more accountable for checking their work. With the approaching group, we felt like they had the same, we talked about how it seemed as though the gap in understanding was very similar. And we had a similar plan, but then also talked about maybe using an equation.
Mm-hmm.
And then with a group that met expectations, You had some really great ideas about ways to extend their thinking into writing equations, and then also throwing in number or word problems with unknowns, and taking away that visual of a number rack. So really great next steps. Now I guess you can go ahead and fill in your Bitly.
Okay, great.
Which will provide you with lots of great information.
Great. Thank you.